the secretary call the roll?
Mary Beth Taylor,
Here.
Brian Bangert,
Here.
Michael Kurtz,
Here.
Rick Dean,
Here.
Julia Turner,
Here.
Ruth Novosad,
Here.
Jim Finnegan.
Here. We have a quorum, so we can conduct business. We're going to reconvene case ZA 2101 from last night. And I'm going to check with the applicant, but I'm pretty sure that they said there was no more rebuttal testimony.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So that part's done. So I think we're moved down to rebuttal testimony of Objector. Is that right, Phil?
Yes.
So at this point, would anyone have rebuttal of anything that was presented in the rebuttal from the applicant last night? We want to give them a couple minutes, you think, Phil, or? You're muted.
I don't think we need to wait. Ms. Vasquez, do you think we need to wait?
No, there were two folks that I know of so far that were an interested party or an objector that are here. And if those folks don't have anything to say, I think we can move on.
As our next thing will be, we'll ask the applicant for a closing statement. If you think we're at that point.
Yes.
That's what we're going to.
You were sworn in last night.
I was. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the ZBA, Mr. Dick, Mr. Mitchell, for assisting in processing this application. I want to thank the Leroy and Blue Ridge school districts for their resolutions and support that they submitted. I want to thank the participating landowners who submitted letters of support for this application. Members of the board, this is a request for an 8% increase in turbine height limit. Only an 8% increase. What is the advantage of this very moderate increase that's being sought in this text amendment? Well, it allows Sapphire Sky to utilize the best turbine technology that's available, to utilize the most advanced and efficient turbines for the Sapphire Sky project. And what are the advantages of using such turbines? First, lower noise emissions, and that's a critical aspect. The turbines that are larger rotate more slowly, producing less noise, as Mr. Hankert testified. Second, more energy is produced by each of these turbines. This requires less turbines for a project. So this creates a situation where you have turbines that are producing less noise and you need fewer of them in order to site a project. That's a substantial advantage that exists in allowing these taller turbines to be utilized. Fewer turbines also means less visual impact. Fewer turbines means less impact upon farmland, reduces the number of foundations that have to be built, reduces the number of access roads, and the length of the underground cables. Further, using the most advanced efficient turbines creates an economically competitive environment in McLean County, allowing projects like Sapphire Sky to compete against other projects in other counties that are now in the development stage. These are clear, undisputed advantages for allowing projects to utilize these slightly taller turbines. So what is the detriment? What are the potential detriments in allowing these taller turbines to be utilized? The evidence shows there are none. Less noise emissions, so certainly noise is not impacted by using taller turbines that produce less noise. As far as shadow flicker, the question from the zoning board was, will the deployment of taller turbines increase shadow flicker? And the answer is no. The shadow flicker for the Sapphire Sky project will not exceed the voluntary 30-hour per year annual limit the project has committed to. But keep in mind, McLean County does not regulate or limit shadow flicker in its ordinances, but it has been customary for projects in the county to voluntarily implement a 30-hour limit. And this is even though the turbines in McLean County have different heights. All the projects in McLean County have different heights, yet most of them have voluntarily committed to this 30-hour limit. That demonstrates, as it should, that turbine height is not dependent upon, that shadow flicker is not dependent upon turbine height. They are independent of each other, as shown by the projects that this county already has. The shadow flicker study for this project shows that with even with all 89 turbine sites modeled as being utilized, even though the actual project will only utilize 64 of those sites, that the project with those 89 will satisfy this 30-hour voluntary limit. Now, the board had a number of questions on shadow flicker, but again, as we've committed to on multiple occasions, this project will not exceed the voluntary 30-hour commitment. Further, the county has the ability, and the ZBA has the ability to recommend imposition of conditions on projects when special use permits are applied for, which require that a voluntary commitment become mandatory, and which require that the project demonstrate that it is in compliance with that shadow flicker standard. So the county board and the zoning board as a recommending body possess the ability to enforce those standards. And those types of conditions are certainly agreeable to Sapphire Sky. Accordingly, the evidence before you is that taller turbines will not result in increased shadow flicker upon residences. What about other potential negative impacts? Well, first, as to aviation safety, there will be no negative impact on aviation safety with taller turbines. The turbines for the Sapphire Sky project have already received determinations of no hazard from the FAA. Concerning the environment, the environmental consultation for this project with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources has concluded, and IDNR has made recommendations, which the project has committed to comply with. Keep in mind, less turbines allow for more flexible design in the project area in order to locate turbines at a greater distance from sensitive environmental areas. So that's another benefit in using taller, fewer turbines. Setbacks, of course, increase proportionately with taller turbines. So there is no negative impact on proximity to roads, property lines, or residences. And for each 1 foot of a turbine height increase, the residential setback increases by 3 feet. Accordingly, for this very moderate, relatively slight incremental increase in turbine tip height of 8%, it allows projects like Sapphire Sky to use quieter, more efficient, and fewer turbines in their projects. On the other hand, it does not create any detrimental impacts upon the community. And finally, the taxes generated by the project remain the same and are not decreased with fewer turbines because the taxes are based upon the overall nameplate capacity of the project. These are significant advantages that taller turbines provide to the county and to the Sapphire Sky project without any disadvantages. And this is a compelling reason for this zoning board to recommend in favor of this proposed text amendment. Again, we thank you for your time, for your attention to this matter, And we respectfully request that you make a positive recommendation in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to call up the names, Phil, of people that can make a closing statement?
Okay. Louis Wozniak. Lori Sleater. Catherine Metzger.
She's going to make one. You can state your name.
Catherine Metzger. I would like to thank the board for their service, and I appreciate the time, the analysis, and the contemplation on this request to change the ordinance, the time that you've spent. And as you know, it is your responsibility as a group to apply guidelines while balancing property rights with equality and interpreting the zoning language. As rural residents, we see your role as being protectors of the personality and the vitality of our areas and our neighborhoods. The last night, we heard information in support of increasing the height of wind turbines. We had to endure listening to the economic value of wind projects once again. However, most of the supporting data provided by the wind company comes from modeling studies, not specific real results. Their models now and during past hearings have indicated that their projects would meet state and county guidelines for noise and shadow flicker. But you've heard from several individuals living in that newest operational wind project in McLean County. And one of them was actually the Invenergy project, that they described the real life living under a 500-foot turbine that were cited using models, but it seems that their models must have been inaccurate. You heard additional information that setbacks are ineffective, both by an Invenergy expert and by Tim Jolly, who is a McLean County resident, and that the ZBA actually required EDP to give him even further setbacks than what was required by the ordinance. I have neighbors who continue to tolerate not just annoying sounds and flickers, but noise and flicker from an Invenergy project that prevents them from using their property and homes like normal people do. This continuous reliance on modeling of noise and shadow flicker is inappropriate, considering the fact that this county has the ability to analyze real data in McLean County. Invenergy and our own zoning office fail to ever follow up or propose solutions after multiple complaints. This leaves the only option for our McLean County residents to receive relief is by incurring great financial cost by bringing civil suits against the company. How is this fair? What ultimately needs to happen is we give up and accept. What ultimately happens is that we, as rural residents, give up and accept the lot that we've been given by your decisions. And our residents eventually believe that the ZBA and county zoning has no credibility. But you have the ability to prevent this by demanding that an independent study comparing the project modeling for this current project that exists in McLean County, that I believe it's the one in Lexington, by comparing that project modeling with the actual results before you allow any increase in blade heights. So if you analyze that model and what is really happening, and then require any mitigation to the current situations that haven't met the noise and flicker standards as a condition to increase those heights. But that study must be done by an independent company, not by Invenergy. This will allow the county to determine whether the accuracy of these models is really correct before you jump in again for another project. Another issue that needs to be pondered that was never addressed by Invenergy is the impact of the longer blade lengths on township roads, weight limits, and turning radiuses. The road commissioners in Lexington, Chenoa, Lawndale, Money Creek, and Gridley Township will tell you the difficulties that they endured with the current blade lengths. So please do not allow the turbine heights to increase until real data is analyzed and looked at and compared with those models that they hang their hat on, and from an independent source. And then make sure that the existing problems are resolved before you create additional problems for the people that live in the new project area around Leroy and Bellflower.
Thank you.
James Soldner. Tim Jolly.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm on the phone. You can hear me now, is that correct? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Once again, I had to go to my phone because I'm having issues with the internet. I didn't really hear a lot of what has happened, so I hope I'm not too repetitive, but the things that stand out to me about this meeting and what we're dealing with here the last couple nights is this was actually voted on basically not maybe 6 months ago of increasing the tower heights. I would submit that maybe all the evidence that was from the previous hearings be submitted also for this hearing itself. The same thing that I agree with is everything you hear about are studies. There's no hard facts to show what the impact of the increase of any kind of size of blades. If I'm correct in saying, I believe it was in 2016 that Mr. Griffin was involved with increasing the tower heights to 500 feet. And then they tried to go to 650 feet. And now we're looking at trying to increase to 550 feet. And where's it going to stop? I mean, if you're going to try to okay something, then make it sky's the limit and just get it over with. I'm really getting kind of tired of trying to have to explain just what these things are doing to our countryside. We need real information, and I have yet to be contacted to have a sound study on my property. These that have been around us here now have been in existence and running for over a year. They're just under 550 feet. Perfect example that we could live by and try and get the information. But I get no cooperation from EDP to try to get some kind of sound study. We do have a portable sound meter that we're passing around amongst the people out here in the area. And there's been times when it's been over the limit on it. But it's not an independent study. So I'm only asking that we get the real information. The other thing is the infrastructure that it takes to make bigger windmills. They said that in the EDP project, they were going to have 75 loads of concrete per windmill. 75 loads of concrete. Instead, they went to 85 loads of concrete, and they took all the resources out of our stone quarries, which is where we get our ag lime for spreading on our farm ground. It's increased the price of our ag lime. And now they've even opened up other quarries, and they're even mining more. The natural resources to make taller turbines, where are they getting these resources? They're making bigger megawatt towers. They have what they call rare earth metals that come from China, that come from other places. We've yet to discuss what it's going to take to decommission even the bigger windmills. They can't even tell us what they're going to do to decommission these blades that came off of the 3 that broke off. And like I said last night, 2 windmills down from where I live, they are setting up the crane that they use to construct these windmills, and they have the apparatus to take the blades off of that one. So they're gonna, and this is all from the Labor Day of last year lightning storm that came through. But they continued to run this windmill down the road here until just 2 weeks ago. And there's evidently a problem, and they won't be forthright in letting us know what's going on out here. Bigger is better? I don't think so. If you deny that this ordinance change would be taking place, that's not going to stop them from being able to put up windmills. They can adhere to the current county ordinance, and they can put up however many windmills they want. Because like I said last night, they're already looking at putting in phase 2 with the EDP at 550 footers. And it's just going to do nothing but increase the number of windmills anyway. So that's bogus argument. The tip speeds, whoever was talking about how the RPMs are going to be lower, the RPMs that are lower are shown at the axle of the nacelle. When you go out and you increase the blade length, common sense only tells you that blade's going to be moving faster. You have wildlife issues. I saw a couple windmills out in our area that have big stains about 5 feet from the tip of the blade. They hit something, don't know what it is, but I don't know if they've even done wildlife studies yet. I haven't seen a bald eagle out here since they started construction. I used to see 4 to 5 a year. They're gone. Is it really green? Like I stated last night, the only green in this project is the money. People are signing up to get the money. That's all you heard last night was people that were looking to make money off of this. And I don't begrudge anybody trying to do things with their property, but us as non-participating owners have the right to our property rights as well. They've ruined our horizon. They've tried to save the climate, but yet they're just going to ruin the environment. And it's already ruined out here. This land will never be reclaimed to be able to farm over because they got 85 concrete trucks in the ground, 2 semi-loads of rebar, and I doubt if they'll ever be decommissioned right. The biggest thing that I want to know is, and I hope that the board is on board with trying to keep the jurisdiction local. Right now, companies like Invenergy, EDP, any of them are lobbying on the state level to take our local control away. And then it's anything goes. So I'm hoping that we at least show that we have interest in keeping our control local. We are not guinea pigs out here, but we are now here. But I don't want other people to have to live with what we've had to do just because somebody wants to make it bigger. The setbacks aren't sufficient. That's not what this hearing's all about, and I understand that. And just like Catherine said, you, the zoning board, increased my setback to 2,000 feet. That's not enough. And just because they increase the height, it's mandatory that they have to put bigger setbacks. Why don't they make a good faith effort to make the setbacks bigger to try to make things more accommodating for non-property owned, the non people that aren't going along with putting the windmills up. We as people that are non-participants should be protected a little bit more because those people sign contracts, they have to live with it. Let them live with it. We don't get anything out of it. And it's not enough steps. These have been operating for 2 years. I've yet to be approached for a sound study. The only thing I can say is I appreciate what the board is doing and listening to us. Please consider that this has basically been denied once already, and I appreciate that fact. And I only look forward to being able to deny this and let them go according to what the zoning ordinance is now until they prove by actual fact that anything can be different. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I say one thing else?
Sure.
Okay, just one more thing. When we're talking about the money and green and everything, I would like to know from the companies themselves, they are heavily subsidized by the U.S. government, of which we all as taxpayers pay into that. I know for a fact that if it weren't for the subsidies that are provided to them to push this so-called green energy, they could not make sufficient enough amount of money to cover the cost to even install these things. And over the lifetime of the span of the project, they would never make back the money. So subsidies are a huge thing in this. We need to keep in mind that they're getting money from us anyway. Thank you.
The last one, Phil.
That's all.
At this point, we're going to close the public hearing and we can go to discussing the case.
I'll start by posing the question of what's different this time than last time.
The height is different, Julia.
Agreed. I think, Rick, I know there are a few things that are different. I want us to discuss those things so that we, as we discuss whether or not we're going to do this, let's differentiate between the last time.
So the one thing that, you know, I understand that we're talking about an increase in the tower height of 45 feet, which is only 8%. And it does seem like it's a relatively small increase. I guess I would like a little bit more information why the 550-foot limit was originally set. And I would have to agree, I don't want to come back every 6 months and, incrementally increase the tower height. I would kind of like to approach this as what's our maximum tower height that makes sense, and kind of go from there. Certainly 8%, a small increase in the tower height, it makes sense that if we can do with less towers and the wind turbines are more efficient, and there does seem to be some benefits. But on the other hand, I do kind of understand that all these studies that have been done are pretty much site-specific studies for this specific project. And we're asked to make a text amendment that will apply to all future projects. So I guess I'm a little uncomfortable in doing that without some better control over what it is we really want to limit, and how do we really want to protect our landowners.
I asked last night about the comparison of the modeling on the sound or the noise levels to the actual. Mr. Hankard said he had been out monitoring one of the existing sites, and he said that they're comparing that energy or that information, and they're getting much better at their modeling and their forecasting. But I'd feel a whole lot better if I saw studies or saw information that backed up that the modeling for one of the existing projects and this last Invenergy project that they did up by Chenoa seems to have the taller turbines, not these great big things that they're proposing for this new one, if we allow them to go up. But to take the data that they're getting and tell us that their modeling is actually, because you can't get actual data until you build them. So prove that your models are correct. The other thing is Catherine said something about the flicker standards. Bill, do we actually have any standard on the flicker?
We can't ask Bill a question. The hearing's closed.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think.
I don't think we do.
Does anybody know that we have flicker
we don't.
standards? I don't think we do.
This is a voluntary agreement that I don't think there's any language in the zoning code that regulates the shadow flicker, which concerns me.
We can set conditions with each project.
So maybe we ought to put it in the code so that we're not asking for voluntary. And that's a different scenario, but we need to think about that.
If we set it as a condition, it's not voluntary.
Yeah.
With each project, if we set it as a condition, that's not voluntary. That's a condition.
Well, I understand. I agree and understand that. But what I'm saying is, why don't we have it in the standards? We need to have it in there so that we don't have to fight over it. Of course, if it needs to be changed, or if they think they need to get more, they'll come in for a variance. So I do agree. First thing I thought when I saw this case was, I thought we just turned this down. Why are we hearing it again? And okay, it's for a smaller height or smaller variance in height, but I don't know. Seems kind of silly.
Are there other wind farms in Illinois I know Pike County just recently increased their tower height. I mean, are there other wind farms? We don't necessarily need to have the wind farms here in McLean County evaluated, but is there any data? I mean, I haven't heard any actual data from any wind farm, not even necessarily in McLean County. Are there other wind farms in McLean or in Illinois with a tower height around 600 feet?
I think there was testimony to that the other night or last night that there are some that are higher than we are.
Well,
I can't
I mean, I know that various counties are making the changes, but are there actual wind farms that have been constructed and are in operation?
I don't remember if I heard that for sure.
But it sounds like there aren't any independent sound studies that we've seen, right? Is that correct? Rather than projections, studies of actual sound on some of the taller wind turbines. And Julia, were you suggesting that that could be a condition that before we vote on? What are your thoughts there?
Not for this text amendment. We either have to say it is or it isn't. We can't make conditions on the text amendment. You know, we can do that on projects as they come in, and we can have them present that information on projects as they come in.
Okay.
And that's the one thing, that's where I feel this particular, aside from also asking for less height change, I do feel like we got more information this go around.
Oh, definitely. The information was much more clear on efficiency, and I thought the presentation, lots better information, definitely.
I feel a little bit more armed with information this time. There's still gaps. I agree with everything you guys have said, but I do feel like we have more information on the equipment, why they want to do it, what it will give them specifically, what the change in height gives them as far as efficiencies goes. So I do think we have that. And also the information on how the wattage is presented as far as, you know, transmission. That was a concern of mine, is just that they would add more big ones. You know, if the goal is to get fewer windmills, are we really going to do that? Or are they just going to make more electricity and put in just as many, only make more electricity?
The way I understood that, Julie, is that they're capped at the 250 or the 300 or whatever they put their
Right.
application for.
And yeah, and that's the information we certainly got from them, is that's determined by what they can transmit. So, you know, in Illinois, there is an issue with transmitting huge amounts on these lines, but that's not to say that it won't increase. I think eventually it will increase, and it has in other places. And therefore the number of windmills would increase. And I think that's the hardest part of this whole thing. And Ruth, you said it, is projecting out to other projects. You know, I'm not even trying to think of this project and the numbers they put out, or any information they put out about this project. I want to know just in general.
It would seem like the current administration we got in Washington is going to push more electricity. And I think you'd have to think that we're probably going to have more transmission lines to handle all that, but that's not something we're dealing with tonight. But it could have an impact on by raising its height, you know, that they could put more in. But I don't know. I mean, it's a tough situation. I mean, if you listen to the applicants, I mean, they can make a pretty strong case for their cause here. But I almost think too that they just bought this project that they're trying to produce, which we're not really talking about, but it still comes down to that. You know, it's like they're rolling the dice. They knew when they bought it, it was only at 550 feet. So is it up to us to bail them out of the situation, or should we hold them to the fire? And I don't know, I don't have an answer to this.
I think for me, it boils down to, we have to decide as a county and as a zoning board, are we looking to have more windmills or more wind farms in the county? Because it does seem, and I feel like they gave us very good evidence of the fact that the trend is to go larger and to have larger, more efficient windmills. And if we feel that that is part of our job, is to work to make that available to our landowners, then that's the angle I'm looking at, is if we're going to stay competitive, if we decide that as a county, that's the way we're going, then we need to stay competitive for our landowners.
And I would have to agree that, I think wind energy is a very important part of our future. And certainly there are economic benefits to the county and to the landowners. And, I think that the wind energy industry should be nurtured and encouraged. And in my mind, this is kind of a baby step. It's a small increase, and it would benefit them in terms of more efficient, lower production costs. And I think there are some very good trade-offs if we want to encourage wind energy in McLean County.
I think that if they can prove, well, they put forth data that says that these are quieter, these bigger machines. And I think that's part of our charge also, is to take care of the residents. So if these machines are actually going to be quieter than what the previous machines that they've got out there are, then it's kind of starts to be a no-brainer. I mean, that's to me, that's going to improve the quality of the non-participants' life out there, if the noise isn't. Because I've sat through, I don't know, every wind farm hearing that every project that we've had in this county, and that's one of the main complaints that we hear over and over. Unfortunately, it's not from a huge, large number of people that are living with it. There's a group that's bounded that it really aggravates, and they're pretty staunch in defending that position. But it'd be nice to know just, yeah, if they're quieter, I think it might make some sense. But
And I certainly think from what we hear from, and I'm so appreciative of the people who come and talk to us about their experience and what they bring, and because I learn something every time. And just as we talk about making 30 hours a condition, as we approve these things, keeping that in mind, are there other things we can keep in mind? For instance, the setback from non-participants. Can we make it a condition that non-participant setback is a little further? So we're all learning as this goes on, and does that become more important as these things get taller if we go that direction?
But I do think that enforcement is a big part of it. I mean, how would we do a sound study, and how would we, is that something that the county can take on, or how would that look? I think that the residents time and time again come in and they have the same complaints every time we talk about these issues. And this issue is never going to resolve itself until we have some good data, whether it be in McLean County or in Illinois or comparable wind farms somewhere else. But I do think that there is a need to get real data, not just the modeling data.
Wouldn't that be something that the county board would have to do? Because requires appropriations of some sort. I would to hire someone to do that, and I don't believe we have that kind of authority.
We certainly have the authority again to make it a condition that after 1 year of operation, they come back with a sound study from an independent source.
It kind of seems to me like we asked for that the last time on these up at,
I thought we did.
and then we asked for that to be one of that was one of our stipulations.
I think you are correct, Jim.
If that's correct, then I think we need to request our legal staff find out where that stuff's at.
Well, I'm pretty sure that we made that a stipulation.
Stipulation on what, though? Did we make it a stipulation?
That they were supposed to do it the way it was presented. That the operation of the wind towers, the turbines would be as presented to us.
But was that
stipulation before we would do a text amendment, I guess is what I'm asking. It wasn't right, and so we can't apply that tonight to this issue, right?
No.
We would have to wait till we reviewed the project for approval and then make it a stipulation at that point. Is that what you're saying, Julia?
Yes, yes. And I think what we're talking about is if we were to do this, you know, what are some things that we as a zoning board need to be thinking of as projects come up?
Right, as the specific projects come before us, consider what we'd like to have done before we approve that.
But we also need to make sure that the enforcement happens, because if Jim's right and we put that stipulation on the building permit that we issued for the last one, and we're not getting that information, then we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that information is available so that we can look at that in the interim, so that when we come into one of these, we're better educated and can understand that we're making a good informed decision, that the modeling is actually good or it really wasn't good.
I truly think that's how we become responsible in this whole issue is, you know, we make it a stipulation and we follow up on that. And then we have that information and we become informed about that.
So the question is that project that we stipulated that on, is it the Invenergy farm that was just built? Because if it is, then I believe that they need to give us that information on that wind farm before we can rule on this request.
Well, I think they kind of alluded to it last night, so that there was an ongoing study, but I'm not sure that it's done. But I think there was some testimony to that last night from Invenergy.
I didn't catch it, but maybe.
Well, I think he said they're operating the way they're supposed to. I mean, so that kind of tells they're in compliance, but I guess I don't know.
Well, I'd like to see documentation and some, you know, stuff that says it is. And it you know, I guess the other thing is the residents that are having the issues with the sound and those things, doesn't the state, if the state sets standards, evidently they don't police theirs very well either. That's another resource that they should have that shouldn't cost them money.
I guess there was something compelling last night when Phil started reading in all the people that were in support of the project that's coming up. There was not one that was against it. It's a little bit compelling, you know, it tells you that either they're not informed or they don't, or they are in favor of this. I mean, the way what we heard was they're all in favor of it. I don't know if they were all people that were getting wind towers or people that lived out there or what, but it would be maybe a little bit more of a rural area. I think where they're at in eastern McLean County, but that was a little bit compelling to me that you had that many people testifying or sending in letters saying that they were in support of it.
Yeah, Chairman. This is Rick, and this is pretty rural out here. I mean, we're more rural than where Catherine's located, and probably similar to the area in Little Lexington is similar to that, but it's different than the White Oak one. And we're talking about property rights for our landowners. That list of people have a vested interest in having a larger tower. You know, they're asking for us to approve this, as well as Invenergy's asking, but those landowners are also asking for us to approve this height change. But it sounds to me like they're not going to do it if we don't change the height. That this project will go away.
Well,
we don't really want that as landowners out here.
We weren't supposed to hear that.
I wasn't supposed to hear what?
We weren't supposed to hear that type of testimony, right?
We heard the letters read. We heard the letter read.
Yeah, but we weren't supposed to hear testimony that the project wouldn't go through if they didn't get the added height.
No, but we did hear it. I mean, there was
what was alluded to, at least, if nothing else.
It didn't. It wouldn't.
We also heard from absentee landowners that don't even live on these properties. Well, that does make a lot of sense because they're not having to evaluate whether it intrudes upon their properties either. I mean, the question that I posed that I didn't feel like was answered, one of them was, you know, the added height, even at 45 feet, 8%, doesn't matter. You can't apply the same math for the projects that exist to something that's taller because the setback was designed, and I'm assuming the setbacks were originally designed by something for what we currently have. The math is that shadow flicker is going to be transmitted much greater distances, and I heard nothing about that. I heard nothing about the economies of energy either. I mean, they're studying wind, but when I asked about the efficiency, reliability, and saturation point of this type of technology, it kind of just circled around the subject. It didn't really address it. I mean, are we just going to rely on wind energy, you know, solely? I mean, that's where I just wanted to know, where are we going with this? I don't feel like that was answered either. But and I believe in property rights, Rick, absolutely. But we also have to, the setbacks don't address the added height. The math doesn't work.
So what I'm hearing is if we add height, we need to pay attention to setback. But Brian, on the efficiency of the energy and, you know, I get what you're talking about. Is it worth the money as you go higher and that type of thing? I feel that's the company's decision. That's a business decision. That's not something that I need to know about. They're not going to ask for it if they're not making more money from it and it's not better for them, which would mean it's creating cheaper energy. That's the only way it's better for them.
Well,
So,
fewer turbines also means fewer landowner opportunities.
that's true, but it may also mean that the rent prices go up because now, you know, they could go down too. I don't know what that means to the market. I thought the same thing though, Brian.
I'm not real clear on your concept of the height and shadow flicker, Brian. It just seems like it's just taller and it's going to reach longer. I understand that, but the amount of time that it's there is for that additional height is almost negligible in my view.
So the current setback is three times the height.
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Okay, so that's for the current size windmills that we've got. Now that setback doesn't work when you go that much higher, because if you follow line of sight from the sun and the blades,
Well,
I asked for the math, and they didn't offer. How much farther does that shadow flicker go when you go a foot, if you go 45 feet or whatever? I asked for the math. I don't know the math. That's what I wanted, because I want to know that this isn't going to cause a problem down the road that we regret.
Does it matter if in fact they have to model it? I mean, they have to figure out that math. If they're voluntarily, and we make it as a stipulation that it can't be more than 30 hours a year on a property, then again, I'm not going to sit and calculate that for every spot. They are the ones agreeing to it, and they calculate that. So if it creates more of an issue, if it creates a longer shadow and can reach more houses, to me, that's their issue, because they still have to stay within the guideline of 30 hours on a property.
I can reason with you on that.
And as it gets farther out with the atmosphere and all that, is it as intense, or does it diffuse the shadow? I'd argue that it's not as intense a shadow way out 2 or 3 miles more as it is at closer range. So
and they testified to that.
Yeah. So I don't think that the height and the flicker are nearly as much as if indeed they are turning slower and they are creating less noise. That's a positive for me.
But they didn't present any of that type of information. We would have to expect that in an application, that they would have to prove that at that point. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what they said. And then Mr. Hankard also said that the studies that he is doing are verifying that their modeling is pretty spot on, and it's actually getting sharper, that they're getting far better at it. But that's his word, and I don't know the man I don't know the man, so I have to take it that he's testifying under oath and that he's telling us the truth. But it certainly would be nice to have actual comparisons to the modeling to verify for ourselves that their modeling's good.
I believe that they testified that there's winds are stronger up higher, and that they will turn slower and create less noise. I think that was part of their testimony.
I heard that also. That's where I was going. So, but
No, I agree.
But like I said, I'd still somehow, some way, sometime, I want to see actual data compared to the model data to find out if their modeling is as good as they say it is. Just for my own peace of mind, so I can make a good informed decision going forward.
My question is to everyone: do we think that in order to stay competitive, we need to increase our height.
For me, the answer to that is yes.
And I have no objection to increasing the height with the understanding that going forward, we kind of tighten some of the contingencies and the restrictions before we approve a project. I mean, I do think we need to enforce some of the shadow flicker restriction and the noise restrictions. And I think we need actual data to prove that these are not, the problems aren't increasing. But
I strongly agree with you, Ruth, on that. I just want to say that.
Whenever they came and asked for 675 or 650, you know, the information was not nearly as thorough as the presentation that we've had the last two nights. So I think that this is better information, and they're not asking for the moon. You know, I think the answer to Ruth's question earlier is that they were asking for, you know, the sky, you know, the first time they came, and now they're being more realistic and give us some good information.
Well, are we at a point where we can maybe make a motion on this, or you want to keep talking? I mean, we're having good discussion, so.
Yeah, I think it's great discussion, and I'm ready for the question, but we need to be sure that everybody's comfortable with what we're talking about here too. So I don't want to rush anything.
I'm comfortable.
I think Julia makes a good point. The technology is getting bigger. Do we want the county to move along with it? And I think that's some of the point tonight. And I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. I mean, that part of it, because I think technology is it's better, and they went taller. And I don't think you can go back.
If I had my preference, they would all stay the size of the ones that you hold in your hand.
Yeah.
Well, the current environment, like we was talking about earlier in Washington, is that this is going to be the way it's going to go for a while. You know, we're getting away from oil, we're getting away from all this other stuff, and solar and wind is where they want to go with this. And you know, you talk about the companies getting subsidies. I understand that, but farmers get subsidies too. Other, you know, businesses got helped a little bit in this pandemic. You know, the money got spread around. So I don't point to anybody or to tell them that, you know, if the money's available to them and the government says, this is what we want you to do, you shouldn't take the money. That's not right. I mean, that's what they're pointing to do.
Solar is easier for us though, isn't it?
Yeah. Trouble is, it takes the whole county to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. One wind tower creates as much as a solar farm.
20 acres.
20 acres.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable from what I've heard in approving this tonight with kind of the conclusion we've reached, that we will look more closely at the next application for approval of a project at the sound studies and flicker studies. And
You know, I'll throw something out at you that I was thinking about last night, and I'm not sure that could be done, but why couldn't we put a sensor on a house that would detect flicker, because it's just light, you know, back and forth. The sensor could pick it up and say, well, we got flicker coming to this house and it's coming from this tower over here. We shut the tower down for an hour and there's no flicker coming into that house. You know, with all the technology out there, I think that would be something that a company could do. Then you don't have, then the person is not getting this flicker deal. And, you know, the company gets what they want because they want to have these towers, but they're, you know, then the residents aren't getting infringed against. And I think it would be a good alternative. You wouldn't have to shut them all down.
I believe in what you're saying. I believe in added improvements and efficiencies. Those are all great and great things. I just wouldn't want to try and get that after the fact, like we're trying to on other projects.
No,
I
but
mean,
you got to plant the seed somewhere.
well,
you know.
These wind farms exist. We should be able to pull data from somebody who's researching someplace else, instead of asking for research on something that's been built here. I guess I'm saying reach out farther for that information.
Well, I guess if a farmer could think about it, you know, it can be done. Because, you know, just like me, Brian, if there's a need, you find a way to do it.
Yep.
Right, Rick?
Absolutely.
I think we're ready for the question. I would recommend approval of case number Z8-21-01. Do you want me to go ahead and state that that's to raise the heights from 550 to 595?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion by Dean, a second by Kurtz. And it's to raise the tower height. Can we have a roll call vote?
Taylor,
Yes.
Bangert,
No,
Kurtz,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Novosad,
Yes.
Finnegan,
Yes.
this will go to the county board on April 15th for a final decision.
Thanks, everybody, for your patience. Don't drive too bad getting home.
And thank you for waiting on me.
Yeah. No, thank you, Chairman. It went well.
I'm kind of jealous because everybody out there has got tea or coffee or something to drink, and you know, I'm just sitting
I turned down a beer, so.
That's good. I'm glad for that. I'm glad you turned that down.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Take care.